Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are advised that this film contains images of people who have passed.
These are not quite the images we expect to see of life in Western Australian country towns 100 years ago. Here, in the Irwin District's museum in Dongara, is the shop account book of Roor Singh. At first glance, it means little to most of us. But it opens the door to the life of a unique Asian migrant community when the White Australia policy was in full cry. We are used to thinking of South Asians as outback cameleers, and we tend to lump them all together as Afghans. But 100 years ago, there were thousands of Sikhs living and working in Australia in towns and cities.
The Sikhs became integrated into the Dongara community, and Roor Singh and Sojan Singh operated two of the principal stores in Dongara.
In fact, the Sikhs were so well integrated in Dongara that the town gained a reputation in the early 1900s as Dirty Dongara because of local women such as Grace Madison marrying Sikh men.
These women, such as Grace Madison, resisted a lot of social expectations, ridicule in the press, and racist abuse to marry the men that they loved and to raise the families they had with them. However, others, including the tabloid press, were proud advocates of the then White Australia policy and cast such women as either simple-minded and deluded, or as harlots, or as hopelessly self-destructive alcoholics. I think it took a lot of courage for both of them to enter into that marriage, especially as it was reported in the Geraldton Press in a very negative and awful way.
The Geraldton Press described the wedding of Grace and Sojan as all the men, women, children, dogs and other animals who could get there assembled. Many of them had evidently never been in a church before and were nearly as mystified by the service as the happy couple at the altar. The Singh shop in Dongara highlights one of the oddities of Australia's White Australia policy. Hawkers required commercial licenses from state governments to sell goods. From the 1890s, these were restricted to British subjects in most states. Sikhs, being part of Britain's empire in India, qualified. Afghans, Chinese and others did not. But the Sikhs in Western Australia were more than shopkeepers. Bhutan Singh was acclaimed as one of the greatest wrestlers the world had known. He fought in bouts in Kalgoorlie, Perth and even the MCG, toured the UK and was invited to wrestle professionally in America.
Despite his fame, Bhutan had to apply for permission to leave Australia and an exemption of the dictation test in order to return.
The government insisted that all coloured would-be migrants had to pass the dictation test. The catch was that the examiner could choose any European language.
The quartermaster showed that he could read and speak English fluently. Consequently, the test must be put in another language than English, and one with which he is unacquainted. W.P. Stokes, boarding inspector.
The dictation test lived on for over 50 years.
This year, an undesirable European obstinately satisfied the examiners in French, German and Italian, and then they beat him with a test in Romanian, and out he went. Harold Dale, 1950 newspaper report.
The Singh store account shows that women in Dongara led a kind of passive resistance against the White Australia policy. They bought goods from the store. Some married Sikh men. They raised multicultural families. But not all were able to cope with the resulting stress and vilification. Tragically, Roor Singh's wife, Annie, died from excessive binge drinking.
Vibrant migrant communities like the Sikhs were here in Western Australia from the 1880s and even earlier until the present day. We bought their goods, their food, their fabrics, we took full advantage of their store credit, and yet we just didn't include them in our local histories. A veil has been drawn over those histories. Now it's time for the Grace and Sojourn Singhs and the Rua Singhs to be written back into our histories to make a fuller and more inclusive history for all of us in every local area.